Welcome to the November 3rd meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any, and members of the public may make their comments. A reminder that only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 against an agenda item. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a speaker will hear a loud beep and indicate 1 minute left to speak, and we ask that you summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, an applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium at the bottom of the stairs, speak into the microphone, give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience, and please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, an applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all the applications, the commission will end the public hearing and go into deliberation, where we discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but without input from the audience. Commissioners then vote on each application, and the results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise during the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, we have the discretion to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the applicant or the application, but depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead, and supernumeraries are already voted unless they're already voting due to absences. A reminder that the Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments, or PUDs, and that the Planning Commission only makes a recommendation on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision on those. At this time, please turn your cell phones to silent or off. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. We'll call the roll. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Mr. Alan Cameron, Ms. Jennifer Denson, Mr. Carlos Gant, Ms. Shirley Sessions,
Here.
Mr. Taylor Atchison, Mr. Matt Anderson, Mr. Nick Amberger,
Here.
Mr. Scott Jones, Ms. Susan Carley, Mr. Kirk Matei. We have a quorum, and I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for November 3rd with 5 agenda items.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move on to the agenda. First section is holdovers. Number 1, south side of Ziegler Boulevard, west of Cody Road, extending to the west side of Cody Road, south of Ziegler Boulevard. The holdover is with a subdivision that's been recommended for tentative approval with 9 listed conditions, and a PUD that is also recommended for approval with 6 findings of fact and 16 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? Applicant's present. Comments from staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you all have before you a revised plan which shows these buildings along Cody Road being shifted around, with the driveway moved to the south to line up with Fellhorn across the street. This is to address concerns from city engineering and traffic engineering. You have a copy of it at your places. Staff is in agreement with this revision with 2 additional conditions. 1, provision of adequate parking in compliance with the zoning ordinance, because the shift does take up some parking, but there's more than enough room in other areas, to provide compliant parking, and to make sure that the setback along Cody Road is maintained.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. Any further comments from city engineering or traffic engineering? None. Okay, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Melissa Curry with Goodwood Mills and Kaywood on behalf of our client, Mr. John Lipweeks. As previously stated, we did realign the entrance road off of Cody Road so that it will align with Bellhorn Road. And the basic change that was made there was the rotation of the building in between. The stormwater management pond will have a slightly different shape, and the dog park as well, but we can work out those details when we get into engineering as well for the amount of volume that will be needed for stormwater management. We believe that we can make this connection work. We had it a little further to the north as shown because of the wetland area and the creek crossing there on the southern part. But we can work with that as long as that's what the city wants. We're more than happy to accommodate that request and work that through the process. We have reduced the number of units that were proposed from the original holdover so that we could make sure that we had adequate parking. We have more than enough open space as well. As you might be able to tell from the site plan too, there was quite a bit of care taken to avoid as many existing trees as possible because there are several large trees on the site, and we wanted to try to maintain that for not only the urban canopy, maintaining that for the city, but also for the enjoyment of future residents and the apartment complex here so that it will have a much more appealing and a more aesthetic, grounded sense of place. So those are the main changes from what we had originally proposed. We worked with staff to make sure that we got everything in that was requested. We aligned the northerly entrance so that it would line up with the fairground entrance as well. So we believe that we've addressed all of the concerns that had been brought up previously, and then those that were brought up earlier today to the satisfaction, hopefully, of staff and of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. Any questions or comments from commissioners of Ms. Curry on the project?
Just one question. What's the total number of apartments that are going to be in here?
The total number of units,
32?
732.
Yes.
And there's no change to that.
And is this going to be done in phases or just all at once?
Sir.
Yes, there are 3 phases proposed. The majority of it is phase 1, that's on the westerly side. That will incorporate the stormwater management pond that will be necessary, more buildings. Then phase 2 is sort of a medium size. So we have kind of a small, medium, and large phase approach. Phase 3 is the northeasterly corner, sort of a square that will round out and finish out the project.
And what's the timeline for those?
The first one will be under construction within a year, and then approximately 24 months per phase.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, I'd just like to thank the applicant for making that adjustment with the intersection down there. At some point, should that intersection need to become signalized, having the alignment there makes it serve both the apartment complex and the neighborhood. So much appreciated, John.
Sure thing. We're glad to accommodate that. I have put it in CAD and started working in the geometry, and it does work. I just haven't had a chance to go back in and count all the parking spaces now that we've made those adjustments. So the sketch that we sent over has been formalized a little bit more, and the geometry works.
If y'all will just continue to work with the engineering department and the traffic engineering department on getting it to align. I know that the Bellhorn intersection is kind of a little unusually wide there. So
it is, yes.
We will do everything we can to help you shift it as far to the north as you can.
Thank you. Terrific.
Anything further from commissioners? All right, thank you, Ms. Curry. Is there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 2 under new business. 105 North Jackson Street. It's been recommended for approval with 3 findings of fact and subject to 4 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir.
I think we're one actually filed as opposition first, and then we'll respond.
Well, what we have here is just need to know if the applicant is present and if you are in agreement with, excuse me, Mr. Carlos Gant is recused. I apologize. I should have said that earlier. As long as you are in agreement with the application with the 3 findings of fact and the 4 listed conditions, and if you are, then you can just state that, and then we will open it up to anyone else that's in favor of the agenda item and then in opposition to the agenda item. And then if there is any opposition, you'll have a chance to speak after those. So if you're in agreement with the application as it stands now. So you are. Okay, good to go. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of agenda item number 2, 105 North Jackson Street? Again, recommended for approval with findings of fact and 4 listed conditions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
would just draw the commission's attention. You have one comment logged into our web portal in support of this application, and then you have copies of some emails in opposition.
Thank you,
The
Ms.
applicant
Pappas.
had a chance to see these.
I'll give commissioners a chance to review those. So they're all out there stapled in front of you.
While you're looking at that, just one question. Has there been a neighborhood meeting with the organization that's looking for this and about this issue? That you're
For
aware of?
this particular application, we do not have any indication that there was a neighborhood meeting. This application was before the commission last year multiple times. Ultimately, the commission approved this application with a restriction on the hours of operation. That application also, based on the occupancy load per the building and fire codes, allowed 341 people. The approval and stipulated by the applicant limited the occupancy to 179. The applicant is not at this time requesting that the occupant load be increased. This application is to alter the condition on the hours of operation.
So I'll now ask if anyone in the audience is here to speak in opposition to agenda item number 2, 105 North Jackson Street. And a reminder that we are limited to 4 speakers. Yes, sir. Please.
Yes, sir. My name is David Sweet with residential property at 208 State Street and 241 North Jackson Street, the new Detente Place development. My fiance submitted an email to y'all. I wanted to be here to make sure that y'all received it. Y'all received the email from Maureen Kinney. That outlines our position. So I'm not in total opposition to this, and I applaud Ms. Gill for having a business in downtown Mobile. But we would really like to make sure that there's some kind of trial run here. I would hope that we would all agree that as the night wears on and people are out later and drinking more, then things do get rowdier. We have had issues driving down North Jackson later at night after going out to dinner in our golf cart. They haven't arisen to the need to call the police, but they are aggravating for a family living in Detente Square. So I'm not in total opposition, but I would hope that you would review what we posited as a potential solution to this. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Sweet of commissioners, or of Mr. Sweet from
Yeah, I'll
commissioners?
ask the same question. If y'all had an opportunity to have this discussion outside of before this.
No, our HOA president, Mark Menard, who's present, probably is going to speak, sent around an email regarding this, but we have had no formal meeting that I know of or was invited to with Ms. Gill or the Canary Bar.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweet.
Thank you.
We have 3 more slots.
Hello, my name is Neil Battalier. This is my wife, Pam Battalier. We are here to speak on behalf on the Canary Bar. We are the founders and leaders of Platform 85, located on 302 St. Michael Street. We started out at 316 Dolphin Street in January of 2018, then moved to our current location in January of 2019. In July of 2019, we began leasing Apartment A, located at 300 St. Michael Street. In November 2019, our daughter and son-in-law began leasing Apartment C on that same premises. We also have been residents in downtown for the past 5 years at North Royal Street in St. Michael. We love downtown and have enjoyed making this our home and community. Since the Canary Bar has opened, it has made significant negative impact to our ministry as well as to the residents of the apartment building directly adjacent to the Canary Bar. We have not made any formal complaints to date, as it has been gradually getting worse since they opened. In the beginning, we were hoping it would get corrected by their management, as we were personally told that there would be an upscale cocktail bar and that there would be light jazz music coming from the courtyard. What was originally proposed is not what it is today. Sadly, we are now in need to make our concerns and frustrations. Number one being noise levels that interfere with functions held at the church and at the apartment courtyard. Number two is the constant smell of marijuana coming from the back courtyard from the Canary Bar and the front entrance that could cause chronic illness in church families, guests, and apartment residents that won't enjoy their home and patio. Vulgar and explicit lyrics coming from the music that is being played out inside and outside of the venue that again can be heard over conversations that are held in apartments and patio courtyards of St. Michael Manor. Unfortunately, the church is not able to participate in Christmas and future art walks due to dangerous conditions with increased traffic, parking conditions, and again, explicit vulgar lyrics and language from the music and moderators that will have a negative impact and effect on Platform 85 visiting families with their children and with visiting guests. Also, increased litter, such as broken, unattended alcoholic beverage bottles that is scattered in parking lots and sidewalks in front of the church and in front of the kids' ministry apartment. Witnessing fights in front of the bar when leaving Bible studies and nightly functions at the church, which causes fear of the possibility of the use of firearms. At this time, I'd let my wife talk about the apartment complex, and I will close.
Thank you. There are 4 units at 300 St. Michael. I have spoken to 2 of the other 3 residents. Of course, Platform 85 leases 1. Myself personally, having been in our kids ministry area, which is one of the apartments, I actually was in with my grandson, and it was only around 8:30 in the evening. We were playing, and a fight broke out right outside the window. Of course, startling him, and as a grandmother, my first instinct is to protect him and get him up and move him into a back area. There's just constant loud noise. I go over there regularly with him, and I've now, become concerned, about, the windows and what's taking place. Again, the explicit music, they open at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have groups that leave church and walk over for Greer's for lunch, and the doors are open, and there's explicit, vulgar language, and we've got children. The other things is, the trash, having to pick up trash every Sunday morning. Things are being set in windowsills and on the ground. That's just been an additional nuisance for the residents of the apartments. I had got 2 of the residents to send me things that they had concerns about. One of the things I read in the proposal was that there had not been any complaints. I'm not sure exactly what type of formal complaint that is, but I know specifically from 2 of the residents, they have called the police twice within the month of October. One was called because the parking in the fire lane, and as well as the noise, And then the other residents also, it was on October the 15th, had to call between the hours of 2 and 3 a.m. because people were sitting on their windowsill, their apartment windowsill, which is right there on the sidewalk, and she could see how the glass was kind of going in. And just, she said there was, over 50 people out on the sidewalks and in the parking lot with loud music going on. And I mean, these are residents who have to go to bed at some point and they want to sleep, and the noise is filtering through these apartments. So she said that she saw, when she made the call to the non-emergency number, police did come on 10:15, and they came on the horseback, and they were able to usher out the crowd. She is complaining as well about the trash. She said she's unable to open her windows with the weather being nice because our courtyards bump up against each other. They're separated by a privacy fence. And she said she's unable to open her windows due to the smell of marijuana, or what we assume to be marijuana. Again, the parking in the fire lanes, there is daily parking that is taking place on the actual sidewalk that is across the street. It's already a broken sidewalk, so, vehicles, I'm sure it's not helping that. And then, again, the resident number 3, has witnessed fights. They're losing sleep due to the loud music. The parking, she says, on the fire lane is concerning to them, of course, being a family, if something was to happen. So there is ring footage. I mean, there's footage on some of these things that are happening. It's not hearsay. And just as we were walking over to this event, I saw posted on social media for Canary Bar that tonight they're having a drunken karaoke, which is fine that for them to have their events, but they're advertising from 3 p.m. until 12 a.m., and this is a Thursday night when they're supposed to close at 10, and then another post said 3 a.m. with the words until. So thank you for your time.
As closing, as a leader, I am responsible for the welfare of our families at Platform 85, as well as being sensitive to the business owners and residents of the community around us. The reason that there aren't many or more official complaints is that I've given managers and leaders of Canary Bar the benefit of the doubt in being sensitive to the surrounding neighbors, business owners, residents, and community. That benefit has been clearly rejected by their actions. Will you, board members, also stand with me or also reject that benefit? Today, board members, you are faced with a pivotal decision to either repeat similar mistakes of our past in comparison to the passing of Ms. Gill's petition to increase the operation hours, which will force a higher crime rate in the area, use of senseless and unneeded calls to our law enforcement, or possibly forcing a good life giving church and residents to leave their homes where they want to raise families, or to make the decision to not pass the request for approval, which will further decrease crime rate in the area, increase the revitalization and beauty of downtown Mobile, and make the downtown entertainment district and surrounding communities a place that invites families and children of all ages to keep them safe and to enjoy everything Mobile has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atalier. Ms. Atalier. We have those, that counts as 2 people. So we have 1 more slot for opposition on this agenda item.
Good afternoon. I am Jonna Rogers, 256 North Jackson Street. I did send in with 3 other people an email to you discussing this. I won't rehash what the other people have said except to reiterate. We support entrepreneurship. We support the bars, the businesses that are in and around Atante, and they all have been great neighbors, respectful of the fact that we can coexist with hours that are reasonable. Canary Bar, the past year, I understand what you've heard here, but they have abided by pretty much what they said they were going to do. The extended hours we consider to be a burden and the potential for what it would do for the neighborhood. We have not had a meeting because we haven't had time with this, but I'm on the board, but I'm representing here, not the board of DeTante, I'm personal here. Have talked to at least a dozen people in the neighborhood. And the thing is, the way it is, we can live with if they will continue. There are obviously some issues that need to be dealt with. And I notice that you have already suggested to accept this. I beg you not to give this a full acceptance. If you feel you must, then let's give them a year trial period to see how this works. I don't like things being past 12 o'clock. I think that is unacceptable this close to residential. But please don't give it a carte blanche. Give it a chance to prove themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. That completes the total count for opposition speakers. The applicant does have a chance to address those concerns that have been brought up.
Larry Mora, attorney, 107 North Jackson Street. The point, where the ministry is concerned, I've never heard that complaint. And if it had been brought, that issue would have been addressed. If they say that the noise is too loud, then it would have piped it down. If they said that the door is open, we'd have made sure that the door is closed. But without bringing it to the attention of Canary Bar, they probably did not address that issue. What Ms. Roberts said just a few moments ago, I can't disagree with what she said. Give them a chance to prove themselves. When this board first allowed the Canary Bar to open and we pushed for the hours of 2 a.m., and the board basically said, first, prove yourself, and then you can submit a new application as far as increasing the hours. We waited a year. And in that year, the Canary Bar, as far as when it was open up to midnight, always had police officers there across the street from the bar, always had rented spaces for the patrons to park their cars. And we heard no type of problem coming. Now, today is a different matter. This is the first time that I've heard that there's been some issues with the Canary Bar. As Ms. Roberts said, you know, it's a neighborhood, and we don't disagree with that. We'll make sure that the noise comes down if that's an issue, because we didn't know that was an issue. Make sure that the doors are closed. 1 year, and I think some of the paperwork that you have before you, someone else suggested that as well. Let's do a trial period, and I think they said January to 2024. Revert back to the original hours that was approved by the planning board at that time. And I think there were 2 letters where they were in agreement with that 1 year. I think it's reasonable. We would like to see it forever for 2 a.m. But the community have an interest, and their interest is due to be considered. And one way to do it, same way we did this one. We waited a year before applying to have the hours increased, and we say the same thing. Let it stay open to 2 a.m. according to the proposal that was made. It stay effective to January the 2nd, right after New Year's, January 2nd to 2024, which will give them 1 year to prove themselves. This is the problem. This is a bar. Got 2 floors to it, and there are a number of organizations who want to rent the place for their affairs. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Mardi Gras, and other occasions, they want to do it on the weekend. But the moment they hear that the shut-off time, that they have to be out of the building at 12 midnight, they're losing a considerable amount of income as a result of that. Based on the loss of income and the opposition that has been brought, and we don't question that. Those seem to be very honest oppositions that they have, which the Canary Bar can address. 1 year, as Ms. Roberts said, we think that is a fair proposal. And after that year is up, or leading up to the end of that year, if there are no issues, we will file again to get the 2 o'clock reinstated. And 1 year of testing, same way we did this time. And we respectfully request that we would modify our request for the 2 a.m. on a full-time basis and let the Canary Bar prove itself, and at the same time address the noise issue, because it doesn't seem like there's any crime or anything like that. It's all about the noise issue. And if you walk in front of Jackson Street, my office is right next door. I know they said trash or whatever it is, but trash is picked up. I even pick it up if there's something left there. It's not an immense amount. But again, the residents, they have a right to voice their opinion on it. And we ask, extend it. We'll modify the request again. Extend it until January 2nd. In the proposal that you're looking at, that came from the residents themselves for that 1 year. And then we'll readdress this issue. We have to file a new application to ask that it be continued at 2 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, so I don't remember us putting a time period on the previous. Did we put a time period on the previous approval?
No,
Okay.
no. There was discussion, though, that if the business was successful, that they could always come back
Right.
and ask for that condition to be amended, hence this application.
Yeah.
The current occupancy is capped at 100,
The current
179.
occupancy
179?
is capped at 179, and they are not asking that that be changed.
So can we do contingency approvals? Okay.
Okay. Any further comments or questions for commissioners or the applicant?
Just to be clear on that, y'all are fine with some kind of contingency or temporary, you mentioned a year, Larry?
Yeah, we're
Still
fine
you're
with that. Those, Kirk, those were good comments that were made, and I could understand if I was a resident living there and those things were happening, I would like a trial basis to make sure that they're going to conform to what they said they're going to do. So we do not object to that.
Mark, in the absence of a self-imposed restriction, are there any just general restrictions that that are just okay?
Would you object to a 2-week delay on this?
I'm sorry.
Would you object to a 2-week delay in us making a decision on this, where y'all could get with some of the neighbors and talk through this? It sounds like this was sort of unexpected, and there seems to be a desire by some folks to have this discussion outside of this venue, and that might help with some of the issues that we're hearing.
What I'm looking at, because we went through this before, and we continued it. I think we may have continued it twice. The people who are concerned about this issue, they're obviously present here today. I don't think anything is going to change. Only thing we basically have is a noise issue, and evidently some trash that's out in the front. And again, my office is next door, and I make sure it's all picked up. So it's a noise issue. That can be addressed. We're not asking to increase the people, the patrons who could come in. It's strictly moving this so they could be open to 2 o'clock a.m., not every day, but only on Fridays and Saturdays, so they can book events.
Kawana Gill. I personally wanted to address I know you guys said that y'all seen fights. I've honestly, we have.
Ms. Gill, would you move closer to the microphone and keep
Since
your?
we have been open, we have never had one fight, like one bad altercation hasn't occurred at Canary Bar since I've been there. Like, I have not seen a fight. When it comes to trash, I pick up trash every Saturday night when we're closed. And on Sunday morning, I pick up things that I know that we don't even have in the bar. So all of the trash collectively cannot be from us, because I pick up steel reserve can or big, bottles of things that we don't even serve in the bar. And I also noticed down Jackson Street, a lot of people park in that parking lot. It's the second largest parking lot downtown. So a lot of issues is not coming from us, because we're not even getting that much business too. And then our doors do be open at 3 o'clock, and that's so we can get people to know that it's a bar to come in, because it's kind of hard to tell that that's a bar. As far as fighting issues or any, I have personally never dealt with it. Like, as an owner, I wouldn't allow that. The police has never been called or came to the resident. Not dismissing what you guys said, I do respect it, but we're very strict on our crowd and how they behave when they come in there. So that's all I want.
Let me ask you this: are you aware of your customers smoking marijuana in your back courtyard?
About that, I'm always on the inside. If it happens outside, I can't control it, but I don't know anything about that.
Yes, ma'am. You can, I'm not arguing with you. You can control it, and if I'm a neighbor, that would be a major concern of the smell coming across my backyard while I'm trying to enjoy the outside. You can control the inside and outside if it's your property.
I've personally never smelled marijuana, because I would dismiss it.
I would ask that you have someone control the outside, please.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Moving on to agenda item number 3, group applications, 6501 Addison Woods Drive. We have a subdivision recommended for tentative approval with 9 listed conditions. We have a PUD also recommended for approval with 5 findings of fact and 8 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the conditions under the subdivision and the PUD? Applicant is present and in agreement. Anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Anyone here to speak against agenda item number 3, 6501 Addison Woods Drive? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, 951 Navco Road. We have a subdivision recommended for tentative approval with 12 listed conditions. We have a sidewalk waiver that has been requested for denial of the waiver. And we have a planning approval that has been recommended for approval with 3 findings of fact and 20 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? I'll ask these in separately. Are you in agreement with all the conditions for the subdivision? Are you in agreement with the sidewalk waiver denial and planning approval with findings of fact and 20 listed conditions? All right, applicant is present and in agreement. Anyone else here to speak for 951 Navco Road? Anyone here to speak against 951 Navco Road? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to address the commission? Come on down, and you can use the microphone at the bottom of the stairs. And ma'am, if you'll move the microphone a little closer, no, the one that's skinny, and then your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, sir. My name is Francine Palmer James. I reside at 9236 Irvington Ballabatory Highway, Irvington, Alabama. I received 2 letters regarding 951 Navco Road. One has to do with 2 storm water tanks, and the other one has to do with a subdivision. I would like to address the one regarding the 2 water tanks.
Yes, ma'am.
has not been explained regarding the water tanks, how the storm water and excess water that will be stored there will need to be pumped out, either through a pumping chamber or through gravity storm water pipe. Pumping stations are very loud. The front property of that 15 acres and where those tanks are residential with people that have to sleep and etc. It also has possibly lowered the property value of the property in front of it because it is residential. The other thing is you have to get to the water tank and constantly monitor it, not only through electronics, but also physically. So there will be a lot of movement of people. And again, this is residential in front of it with a lot of duplexes there. As far as the dividing the property into 2 lots, I have no opinion regarding that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Malberg James. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to this agenda item? Yes, sir, if you'd like to address the concerns that were just brought up.
Russell Lomax with Malls, 4725 Moffett Road, Mobile, Alabama, 36619. To address a few things, as far as the pumping of it, this is actually pumped from the opposite side of the Slava Creek up to the stormwater attenuation tanks, and it gravity flows back. So there should be very little noise actually on the site of the tanks. The personnel, and we have these scattered, we've got them both in basins on our Halls Mill force main. We have the tanks on the 3 mile line. And none of those, we really don't have much traffic going in and out of these. These are only used during heavy storms. It pumps from the pump station up to the tanks, fills up the tanks to whatever degree it has to, and then it slowly releases it back into the system as the storm water inside the sewer lines slowly subsides. So there's really not a lot of vehicular traffic. You'll see more as far as maintenance of the area, as far as cutting the lawns and keeping the grass and stuff neatly done in the landscaping than you will workers. It's all controlled by SCADA. Yes, we do have electronics, so we do have SCADA systems that will be able to monitor the levels of the tank and do most of what we need to do is automated. So I don't see a lot of issues there. We've also provided I think it's 150 feet on the front of buffer and then 50 or 100 foot on the sides. I can't remember which one it was, but we've got buffer zones around it in order to also to help reduce down any kind of, it's really more of a sightline thing to hold down any kind of unsightly tank that you'd have there. And also those tanks will be painted more of a neutral color to blend in with the surroundings.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So is the entirety of what's kind of delineated here as Lot 1, is that all going to be clear-cut grass?
We'll leave the buffer, inside the buffer zone, it'll be cut grass.
Okay, I got you. So inside the dotted lines here.
Correct.
What's the size of these tanks gallon-wise?
You may have to help me. I want to say they're maybe 8 million apiece. 212 million.
212 million.
And all of this is done, and just so everybody's aware, these stormwater attenuation tanks, we're doing this for the communities and for the waterways. It's not done in spite of them. I mean, we've had successful, not testing, but successful tanks at 3 mile, which has greatly reduced the SSOs in that area. And we've also in the Hallsville area. We really
Define SSO.
it's a sanitary sewer overflow. Yeah, this is basically the only basin that we have left that we have a problem with those sanitary sewer overflows.
Or what's the required buffer for something like this? Great.
Any more questions for Mr. Lomax?
Well, this is a comment I'd just like to offer about the sidewalk waiver. It looks like they've requested it in 2 places along Navico Road and then really along what is the rear of the plant. And if you look on there, it's sidewalk on the rear of the property. It's not going to anything but the plant. And then on Navico, it's an open ditch section. And it just really, the sidewalks wouldn't be, if sidewalks were going to be there, they'd be constructed by the city in a much, much larger project. So, I mean, I work with malls on a pretty regular basis, and I know they have to some degree limited dollars because they are tax dollars, and I just kind of see the sidewalks in those locations. Happy if y'all want to build them, but I do kind of see it as a waste of money. It's
Basically a pig trail on the backside.
There's nothing back there.
It's just a pig trail that it actually, if you look at the wetlands on it as well, to the east of our property line, you'll see the wetlands come, or the floodplain comes all the way up almost to the roadbed.
Generally never inclined to want to support a waiver request for sidewalks because the city is very pro sidewalks.
Well, I didn't feel like I needed to argue it. It's usually a losing proposition.
I have to stand up for it I have to stand up where it makes. This is just one of those situations where we're all public servants with public dollars, and it makes no sense to put sidewalks here.
Any further questions or comments on this agenda item? All right, thank you, Mr. Lomax. Agenda item number 5, 631 Azalea Road. We have a PUD and planning approval. This is for Walks and Wags. It's been recommended for holdover to the November 17th meeting. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the holdover until November 17th? Staff, any comments on the holdover?
Staff has not received any communication regarding the holdover.
This will come up at the board's meeting on Monday. I'm sorry. So because there is a variance needed, because they had a variance in the past, we also. What additional information is needed? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, looking for buttons. They have this connection with the adjoining property, and that connection either needs to be eliminated or this property needs to be brought in with the PUD. So we need a revised plan showing the balance of the property, as well as a more detailed scope of operation on what this new building's going to be used for. There was a pre-development meeting held on this regarding this site, and in the meeting it was discussed that this was going to be a therapy pool, but since it wasn't included in the application, we didn't want to simply make an assumption, and we would simply need a narrative to describe that. So that is the reason for the holdovers, or those are the reasons for the recommended holdovers.
Okay, the applicant is present. Make a suggestion for a brief visit after their, okay. Since it's on the agenda, we'll ask if anyone else is here to speak in favor of 631 Azalea Road. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to 631 Azalea Road? All right. Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing session, move back to number 1 on the agenda for the deliberation session. Holdover from Ziegler Boulevard Apartments. Applicant was present and in agreement with the tentative approval and the 9 listed conditions, and the PUD with 6 findings of fact and 16 listed conditions. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, 2 questions. One, is this for just the sub?
I'll take them separately. Subdivision. I'll revise. Will whoever made the motion revise it to the subdivision, please?
That was just the sub, yeah. Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On the PUD, recommended for approval with 6 findings of fact and 16 listed conditions.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation, adopting findings of facts A, B, C, D, E, and F, and requiring adequate parking associated with the intersection shift
And the setback.
and setback concurrence.
On the PUD, properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 2, 105 North Jackson Street. Again, staff has recommended approval with findings of fact, of which there were 3 listed and 4 listed conditions. And there was question regarding time stipulation of any recommendations.
This application was, when it was before us last year, I think there were 4 public hearings at this level and then a couple more at City Council. Certainly the decision last time was not typical of a bar in an entertainment district, and that's what this is the key for this application is in an entertainment district. Set by the City Council. And so what the decision was last time was unusual. There have been, as a report says, staff report says, there have been no calls to the police department other than burglar alarms. So really we can't treat this location any different than any other location in the entertainment district. We have bars and restaurants on Dauphin Street that are right next to condos, apartments. As far as the applicant's offer to limit this till January 2nd, 2024, we do not have the legal ability to force them to do that unilaterally, but their offer to do that is to me an agreement with the neighborhood for self-imposed restrictions. So I would suggest you approve it. From a legal viewpoint, I think that the best thing is to approve it with their self-imposed conditions. And that's for Saturday night, Friday and Saturday nights until January 2nd, 2024.
I've heard all the arguments on both sides. I've read all of the statements. Whatever we do here is going to set a precedent for this area. It is a little bit different than the other entertainment district in the fact when you look at the layout of the site surrounding it, it's not in an entertainment district. It really isn't. It's near residences, it's near offices. The other bars and eateries vicinity of this location do close at 10 p.m. So this would be setting a precedent. I would like to hold this over for 2 weeks. I would like for the neighborhood to get with the owners and the attorney and continue this discussion. And hopefully the amount of negative feedback that we've heard with regards to what we heard today with loitering late, with drugs, with noise well beyond midnight, can be resolved between the neighbors and the institution. And that would also give me some time to do a little bit of research on my end with these other establishments and what they're doing, as well as talk to some of the other establishments that are in what I feel is more of an entertainment district and what they're doing to sort of safeguard themselves for some of these things that do open a little bit later. I make a motion we hold this over for 2 weeks.
Just for the record, this portion of the entertainment district, this building is in the same entertainment district as Dolphin Street. That one entertainment district goes from the Civic Center all the way to St. Michael, then it carves out this half block. This building is the edge of the entertainment district, but it's in the same one as Dolphin Street. So from a legal viewpoint, we need to treat them all the same.
A reminder that Mr. Carlos Gann is recused from this. We have one motion on the floor for holdover, but I would need to ask staff what the agenda items count is for November 17th, if you know anything about that yet. Didn't mean to throw you one for a loop, Miss York.
Well, she looks at that. I remember this one from when it came out before, and I remember being a little frustrated because I felt like we had a lot of the opposition and the applicant were saying completely different things, and there was like we held it over a bunch of times, and seemed like there was not much compromise. And I will say this: there's been complaints, but I commend the applicant and the neighborhood for trying to find some common ground here. And I think the fact that we have an applicant willing to enter into a kind of voluntary restriction, and there is some compromise on this, I like to see. I'm the president of a historic neighborhood, used to live downtown, have a business downtown, sensitive to all the concerns here. And I would be in favor of voting for this, assuming the applicant is in agreement to do a temporary thing. It seems like a decent resolution. And I think the applicant and the neighborhood, one of the issues here is we have a staff report saying there's been no complaints. There's obviously been some statements about folks here today that have had issues. The amount of trash and stuff we pick up at my law firm across the street's unbelievable, and that's not coming from our folks. And so I am sensitive to that sentiment from the owner that this isn't all them. But if the neighborhood's offering to enter into a compromise with them and do this temporarily, I would be in favor of that today. I just wonder if asking them to do another meeting is going to move the ball much, if there's some compromise already being made. But I would say this too, and I'm sure the applicant knows this and the neighborhood knows this, if there's issues that would be making complaints. And I think the applicants can obviously tell that the neighborhood has some issues and is focused on this, because it is kind of a transitional area right now, and this is having a bar open that late. There's not a lot in that immediate vicinity. And so the temporary compromise seems to be pretty reasonable to me.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the staff. If there were no self-imposed regulations by this establishment or any others, what would be the hours? What are the basic differences in what they're self-imposing on them to where, now think about the police department having to enforce this, and every business has got a different set of hours or working rules. I mean, that's just an impossible scenario. I'm just curious what the difference would be.
My short answer to that is I don't know. I can tell you in the zoning ordinance, there's nothing. I can tell you that in this commission's actions on other planning approvals for increased occupant loads within the DDD, this is the only site that has a restriction on operating hours. Now, there are other sites, including this one, that have restrictions on hours when outdoor activities and amplified sound can be used. But this is an anomaly in terms of restricting the hours of operation. You have the noise ordinance that's enforced by PD. Some of the hours of operation are restricted by ABC board, state liquor licenses. So I'm giving you the information I have, but the short answer is the zoning ordinance doesn't regulate the hours of operation.
I can just see it getting to be very, very complicated if every business and entertainment district has its own little sets of rules. I mean, how is a law enforcement officer going to be able to take care of that? Now, I will say if there smells of marijuana and things like that, I think it's incumbent upon the owner to reach out to the police department and let that be addressed accordingly, because I don't think anybody living in a neighborhood would want that. But I'm inclined to want to support them having hours that are in concert with what the ordinance allows it to do. And if they're willing to self-restrict, and that meets finds a common ground with the neighborhood themselves, then I have to kind of find myself in favor of that as well.
So what's restricting Iron Hand and Braided River to close at 11?
I don't know if there's any city code dealing with this, but the ABC board has different rules for different types. Their breweries, I don't know if that has something to do with it, but the ABC board is the most controlling. I shouldn't say it that way. They have the most control over that issue. And it's different types of what kind of license you can get.
Yeah, I'll let one of you come down and speak briefly to the question that's being. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mark Menert, 312 North Joachim. So we actually have an agreement in place. Iron Hand is within Detanti Square. We have a neighborhood agreement in place with them that restricts their hours. That was part of their original approval. So that's where that comes from. As far as I know, Braided River is voluntary. They're also attached to an apartment complex. So it could be part of their lease. I don't know what the restrictions
I was fixing to say, to clarify though, those are not restrictions that have been placed by this commission because neither one of them had to obtain planning approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. We have a motion on the floor. Does not have a second to hold over. Is there a second? That motion has failed. Entertain a motion.
Is the cleanest, quote unquote, or clearest way to put that is to add that to recommended condition number 3?
And just to be clear, the applicant's fine with that voluntary restriction. I mean, I just don't want us to vote, Doug. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I just want to make sure we're clear on how this is happening.
It's my understanding that the recommendation that we voluntarily agree to set it off to 2024, yes, we're totally in agreement with that.
I second Mr. Anderson's motion.
Properly moved and seconded.
Can I ask a question?
Question by Commissioner.
I have a question about the other items that talked about Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then a 3 a.m. cleaning time frame. Is that part of the motion? Is to agree with all of that? And
It's not part of the motion. And in the part about cleaning, that's really a non-issue. As long as they're shut down for operation
then it doesn't
to the
matter
public
when they
at 2 o'clock, then if they want to stay there for 6 more hours and clean, they're entitled to, but they have to shut down at that point in time.
We have a motion and a second to approve with contingent on condition number 3 until January 2nd of 2024. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
The motion passes. Group applications, agenda item number 3, 6501 Addison Woods Drive. We'll take these separately. We have a subdivision recommended for approval with 9 listed conditions, and we have a PUD with 5 findings of fact and 8 listed conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. We'll take them separately.
Mr. Chairman, before you take that up, I don't believe we adopted findings of facts on the item number 2.
Restate that, Mr. Amberger.
On item number 2, the one we just took up, we didn't address the findings of facts. I'll second that as well.
All right. Moving back. Amended motion for the findings of fact and the contingency of condition number 3. Amended second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Well, I'll fall on the sword for that one. Group application number 3, restating subdivision, tentative approval, 9 listed conditions, PUD, 5 findings of fact with 8 listed conditions. Take them separately on the subdivision. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? On the PUD, entertain a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 4, 951 Navco Road. Been recommended for tentative approval with 12 listed conditions on the subdivision, and on the sidewalk waiver, we'll take them all separately. So on the subdivision, we have a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion for the subdivision passes. We have a sidewalk recommendation or sidewalk waiver requested is denied.
Move to approve the waiver.
A waiver to approve, properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion to waive sidewalk is approved. And on planning approval, it's recommended for with findings of fact and 20 listed conditions.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendation adopting findings of facts A, B, and C.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5, 631 Azalea Road, Walks and Wags, PUD, and a planning approval recommended for holdover until November 17th. The applicant has left the audience. It appears as though they were in agreement. Properly moved and seconded for holdover to November 17. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Any further comments from staff or other business items? Meeting adjourned.